Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Laura Runcie. I'm a registered nurse in New Brunswick. In case you haven't heard my spiel before, I'm actually a stay-at-home mom, and I like to pretend I have a hobby job of cardiovascular nursing, but I'm really into it. And I have the privilege and pleasure of hosting the Career Journeys with Heart for CCCN. Today, our host or our guest is Estrelita. She hails from Manitoba, and I don't really want to give too much detail away because she has a very interesting career path. But she currently is a nurse practitioner working in a private heart function clinic, more or less. But if I've worded that wrong, she will correct me as she gives us her details here. So, Estrelita, if you don't mind, my first question before you dig in to telling us your history is, what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Actually, a nurse, to be a nurse. So in the Philippines, it's actually quite different. So if you're a man, you could be a lawyer or a doctor. But if you're a woman, if a teacher, a nurse, a dressmaker, a secretary, so it's quite different, right? So, or a housewife, right? So, no, I've always wanted to be a nurse, and I've
That's
never had any other job other than nursing job.
that is kind of a treat. In our previous guest so far, no one wanted to be a nurse until we all had kind of like accidentally stumbled into nursing, either a nudge from a loved one or something like that. So you're like lifelong into nursing. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
definitely. Yeah,
All right. So
I wasn't even aware that Chris was a travel agent before
yeah,
until I heard her story. Anyways, that
yeah,
was
that was
interesting.
it's all the things we learn about people, right? Um, so it's really to please talk us through how did you started the early echelons of your nursing career. Guide us
Okay.
through your journey.
All right. So I graduated from a 5-year program from the Philippines, and that was back in 1980, and that was the last 5-year program in the Philippines for nursing. So that was in 1980, and I came to Canada in 1981, March of 1981, March 18, to be exact. And I started working at the Health Sciences Center as a graduate nurse in September of 1981, while I was waiting to get certified in nursing. So I worked in a medical, very heavy medical ward, and at that time there was really no cardiology ward. So every medical patients, including cardiac patients, go to medicine, right? So I worked there for about a couple of years, and then I became interested in ICU nursing. I had a girlfriend that was also working in another medical ward who actually encouraged me to do ICU nursing with her. And then we did that, and that was back in 1983. And then went on to work in the medical ICU, CCU area for many years. So I was actually, I guess I was assigned quite a bit in the CCU area, and a lot of the physicians in the ICU thought I was actually just not just a CCU nurse rather than an ICU CCU nurse. So during that time, I also went and did my post RN BN program. The BN program in the Philippines was not given accreditation in Canada. And the reason being, at that time, we only had 6 years in elementary and 4 years in high school. So that's only 10 years, right? Instead of having a grade 12 education before going into college. So I did that while working in the medical ICU, CCU, and I think graduated probably back in 1992 or 93. Also, during that time, I was sort of got interested in clinical research, and there was a job posting. Oh, they were looking for a research nurse in lipidology and hypertension. So I asked that my EFT be reduced to 80% because I really wanted to try doing that. So I did clinical research in lipidology and hypertension with the late Dr. Myman, who is the pioneer of a cardiac rehab program in Winnipeg. So I did that really, what had great interest in lipids, learned a lot about it, learned a lot about hypertension. Um, and then another possibility of going into a different area in nursing came about. There was a call for someone who may be interested in doing the cardiothoracic nurse clinician program. It is a program supported by Health Sciences Center in St. Boniface area, St. Boniface Hospital, sorry. And there were already a couple of applicants. And so I applied, and St. Boniface is actually a funded program. So you actually receive some money doing it. So St. Boniface actually um, provided funding for getting into the program, even though I wasn't working there. So that was a 16 months program that was designed to uh, be able to manage people going for cardiac surgery and thoracic surgery, like cancers and stuff. Um, so I did that, but there was no guarantee that I will get a job after, right? But it's to me, it's a free education, and I will get some kind of payment doing that as well. And it was a great, it was a, it was a great program. So, um, but also during that time, another thing came up. There was a master's in health administration program that was offered by Manitoba Health with Central Michigan University, and applied for it. So I was in two programs, doing two programs at the same time. And it was tough. Monday to Friday, I was doing the cardiothoracic clinician program. Friday, Saturday, the master's program. But I had a lot of support from people, right? My late husband was there driving me all over the place. And yeah, and my coworkers were also very supportive of me. And so I completed those two programs. When I completed the clinician program, there was no job. So I could easily go back to ICU nursing. But then cardiology clinic position came up and applied for it. So I thought it would be different. It's a Monday to Friday, and you're actually seeing people almost like a clinic type um, uh, surrounding, right? So I did that for a few years. I did, pre-angio teaching, monitoring at warfarin, assisting with stress echoes, you know, um, and then the 50% position in cardiothoracic program came up. So I moved to that position and became the nurse clinician, or do we call it CVT associate at that time at St. Boniface? They call them nurse clinicians. So it's a nurse for position, and I did that for a few years until, and it was great. I mean, we worked very well with cardiac and thoracic surgeons, really learned about cardiac surgery, looking after people pre-op as well as post-op. Of course, it's when the surgeons are not there, we look after uh, those patients, and they're now called. Actually, they're replaced by physician assistants and our clinical assist, right? In 2000, a position at St. Boniface Hospital for clinical nurse specialist came about, and I applied for it. It is in medicine, and I got the position, so I started working there. It was great. It's entirely new to me. Um, you know, uh, the the job description is quite varied, right? So you're an educator, you're involved in program planning. You have to be able to get what we call a certain position at university to be able to teach as well. Um, so that was really good. I mentored a lot of new nurses in that position. So in medicine, there was no cardiac science program at that time. So it's also, you also have to look after ICU, CCU, as well as family medicine and the medical, regular medical wards. So that was great. And then in about 2001, they decided to establish the cardiac sciences program in Manitoba. And I was asked to participate in the planning of that. Great. And basically help with planning the new heart failure clinic. And that was the introduction to the heart failure clinic, the heart failure for me. So in 2002, I applied for the clinical nurse specialist position for heart failure clinic. I got the job. And, I had a wonderful physician that worked with me, Dr. Azevedo, who came from Toronto, actually. And so I worked with him from 2002 to 2004. We created the clinic. It was wonderful. I learned a lot about, heart failure. Was able to participate in a lot of conferences in heart failure. But then in 2004, he decided he wanted to go back to Toronto. So I was left with a clinic with so many patients and no physicians. So I talked and like, what are we gonna do, right? So I talked to then the section heads, Dr. Tam, and I said, you have interest in heart failure. Would you like to help me in the clinic? I also identified two other physicians that I know had interest in heart failure. Dr. Patty Griffin, who had interest in pregnancy and heart failure, as well as Dr. Drobot, as an internal medicine physician. So the three of them helped me. We continued seeing all these patients. I learned to actually even refer patients on my own for heart transplants to Edmonton and other places. I started having my own clinic, and some clinics are supported by physicians, some are just mainly me. I didn't have any other nurses working with me at that time. There was a charge person that will occasionally help me. So that went on until 2006. So that I love it because I became very independent. But knowing that I was a clinical nurse specialist, I cannot really be independent in treating patient. You have to have, I know how to treat, but you have to have the physician's approval of medical management of patients, right? So in 2006, Dr. Ziroff came back to Manitoba. She was trained in heart failure and transplant in Toronto, came back and she became the director of the heart failure clinic in Winnipeg. And she was such a great support for me. During my work as a clinical nurse specialist, not only that I was doing the clinic clinician part, but I was also, because as a clinical nurse specialist, you do have to be involved in program planning, research. I introduce education of nurses is very important to me even now, and I introduce having grand rounds for nurses, cardiac nurses in our program. Introduce some simple pilot studies in medication reconciliation. And later on, I actually created a pilot study of, although this is later on when I became a nurse practitioner. So it's a really good position because I'm not away from clinical, providing clinical management to patients, but I'm also doing research and other, important programs for the cardiac sciences. Later on, I thought, well, I really wanted to be independent in treating patients. So I thought, and I know that there was money that I was involved in international research and HF Action trial. And there was money that was I couldn't really touch, right? Um, so it was just there in one of our, how to call that, it was just there, and we're not touching it. And I thought, I'm going to go back to school, but can I use that money and use it to fund my nursing education? And they said yes. So I did. So I went and applied to Athabasca, master's in nursing with advanced nursing practice. And I did that from 2010 to 2013 and graduated in 2013, or completed in 2013, and the graduation was in 2014. So after graduation, I said, can we switch my job description to a nurse practitioner? You can't just do that, right? Because it's a unionized position, so you actually have to apply for it. So I applied for it, went through the interview, all that stuff, and they gave it to me. But I said, I just don't want to be a nurse practitioner. I want a blend of a clinical nurse specialist and a nurse practitioner. And and yeah, that's kind of what I did from 2014 to until I retired from heart failure clinic in 2019. So it was awesome because again, not only that I, not only that I was able to manage people with heart failure on my own, but I was also continuing to do program planning, education, research, and that was really, that's what I wanted. Um, one of the last thing that one of the things that I did as a nurse practitioner is I know patients that are being admitted for heart failure, the 30-day readmission is pretty high. So I looked at the readmission rate that we have at St. Boniface, and it's anywhere from like 16 to like 26% 30-day readmission, right? So I said, well, why don't we do a pilot study and looking at um, nurse practitioner transition clinic. So the nurse practitioner will see the patient within 7 to 14 days of discharge, optimize their medications, and then continuing on to be seen in the heart failure clinic. So we did that, and it was really, the outcome was really good. The readmission rate went down to like 5%. Um, only had one patient, I can't remember how many patient I had, but that 5% really is only one patient that came in with arrhythmia, basically. So one of our residents was sort of interested in trying to figure out the outcomes of patients that were seen initially by physician versus the nurse practitioner. So he did a study about, and of course I won. Anyways, there was the optimization of medication was faster in the nurse practitioner transition clinic. The outcomes in terms of New York Heart Association functional, is better in the nurse NP than the physician group. So that was good, and I'm not sure. I think it still is happening because when I retired in 2019, a new nurse practitioner took over, and as far as I know, they are continuing with that nurse practitioner transition clinic. Right. So also before I left, about a year before I left, I talked to Dr. Zirad and said, I think we need to have a critical pathway for heart failure patients in hospital. So we did the heart failure heart failure care map, and that was almost completed by the time I left the heart failure clinic. I also established the heart failure support group at Manitoba. That was done in 2010, and I'm continuing with that. So I still have that support group. I also started the annual Heart Failure Awareness Day. we were the ones that said we don't really want it in February, we want it in May. And sort of that's kind of what happened with Canadian Heart Failure Society having the Heart Failure Awareness Week in May, right? So we started doing that in 2008, an annual affair. We opened the it's an afternoon of learning for the public, and open to anybody in the public. So that went on from 2008 till about 2019. And of course, with COVID, that was stopped. So, but we do have, as part of the Canadian Heart Failure Society program, we do have the Heart Failure Awareness Week group, and we created sort of a template for anybody who wants to create a heart failure awareness day in their city or province. They can just go through the website and they will have guidelines on how to do it. So I retired in 2019. I thought, yeah, I'm old enough. But then before retirement, Cardio One, which is a private cardiology clinic, approached me and said, could you help us? You know, when there was a cardiologist and two internal medicine physicians at that time. And they said, you know, if you can basically tell us when you want to work, if you want to go away, we'll be okay with that. So I started out working 3 days a week. This was 4 months after I retirement from St. Boniface Hospital. I started working there and continued to work till now. So I'm actually doing 2 days a week when I'm not away on vacation. So I have, you know, I have my own clinic, but because it is a private clinic, the funding, there's no funding from government, right? So the physician has to make money in order to pay me. And in order to do that, he has to kind of show his face on and talk to my patient after I assess and see the patient already, just to be able to, you know, bill Manitoba Health for that. So so that's kind of where I am right now. It's great because I know there's not a lot of support for community clinics. We don't have, unlike in the heart failure, established heart failure clinic supported by Manitoba Health, we don't have access to dietitian, physio, social work, and all that. So I am all that, right? So I kind of need to be aware of the resources available in the community and have to be able to refer them to those resources. I'm pretty big on cardiac rehab. So I do refer patients to cardiac rehab. And actually, I exercise with some of them because I go to the same because it's a regular gym as well. So I actually do exercise with some of them who have completed the cardiac rehab. So yeah, so that's kind of sort of my journey, in from graduation to up to now. Oh yeah, and you know, CCCN, I became active in CCN in, I think it's about 2001. Became a provincial director for several years, and CCCN really helped me a lot. They introduced me to other, you know, other like the CCS, and I was involved. I was asked to be involved in be part of the panel for guidelines, the heart failure guidelines. And I did that from 2008, I think, till about 2017 or 18. And they also asked me through CCCN, CNA had asked me to help with evaluating the CNA certification. So I did that for a couple of years. So those were really good opportunities that CCCN was able to help. Yeah.
They can't hear me. I don't know who just said we can't hear you, but we can hear you. I don't. Thank you, Estrelita. That is it's a lifetime of cardiovascular nursing. I think it might actually be a few lifetimes of cardiovascular nursing, to be totally honest. And I
Yeah.
have a lot of questions about so many parts of it. Um, but I really enjoyed I had the privilege of having a short bio that Estrelita had sent me beforehand, and I really enjoyed reading it because every time I'm like, oh wow, she's really nailing this corner of cardiovascular care, or like she's really nailing heart failure, and then it's like, oh, and also she does all this mentoring and teaching and support for new nurse practitioners and like floor nurses and just nurses in general. So that's super cool. Oh, and then also she does this over here, and oh, also she made this clinic, and I'm like, oh, okay, so it's not just that you've really built up an expertise in one area here. Like you're involved in mentorship, you're involved in education, you're involved in patient care and education and rehab and all of those spheres. So it is nice to see how wide a nurse's wingspan really can go, and the aspects that it can cover in that
So,
capacity. Um, you've shifted a lot throughout your journey. Are you able to recall, or can you talk a little bit about the shift from acute bedside? Because at some point, I don't. You didn't mention you still work in the ICU at all. So at some point, you've shifted away from acute bedside to clinical assist type roles, clinical managing roles, NP roles. Do you have any fond memories or recollections about that shift from acute bedside to
well, you know,
still nursing care, but
I think we had a 16 months training, right? So in those training we had so many mentors, like physicians, residents, uh, nurses that actually work in cardiac surgery. They all kind of help us. Plus the knowledge that you gain from doing the ICU for many years in the ICU and the ICU training help us with that as well. Like in the ICU program, we also looked after people because you have to do medical and surgical. So I did have quite a bit of surgical experience when I was doing the ICU course. Plus, there were already nurse clinicians in that role who help who help us, right? So it's not that we're just starting, but we have a lot of mentors. When I was switching from, being an acute ICU nurse to being a CVT associate, but that's also an acute nursing as well, right? So we help nurses in the unit look after those patients, but we're kind of focusing on, treatment and, um, more procedures and assessing, more advanced assessment of patients post surgery. So it's the mentoring of other people. The people that you work with really help a lot in, making the transition a lot easier. Yeah.
that kind of leads me to my next question. Then, if it's the mentoring and the people that you work with and that help you along the way, it's very clear that you're quite good at networking. You've made a lot of connections over the time, whether through CCCN or the doctors you work with and the nurses you work with and so forth. And your reputation seems to precede you a little bit, in that if you don't make yourself a role, there's somebody who's like, oh, we need Estrelita to fill this role. I mean, it happened here with you being on this podcast or this webinar today, where we're like, who has an interesting career? Oh, Estrelita has an interesting career. So do you have any tips or tricks or comments for other nurses out there regarding the importance of networking and making connections along the way, not just nurse to nurse, but across all of the sectors of a healthcare
Yeah,
professional?
so definitely, meeting people across Canada it was a great opportunities for me. And I really have to thank CCCN for that. Um, and keeping in touch with them, right? And participating in a lot of the projects that that they have. CCN had asked us to do a lot of presentations. They have programs. They have, and not only there's another group called initially the Canadian Heart Failure Clinic Network, and that was also instrumental. We have nurses, heart failure nurses across Canada that I was able to meet. We exchange protocols, with if they have some programs that you think might work for you as well, that may help improve patient care. They are just so willing to um, help you with that, or give you some of the resources that they have, right? So those are very, very helpful. Um, and having a good relationship with them, of course, is a big thing. So and there's a give and take, right? So if they ask you for some of the protocols that you might have done, you have to be willing to share those things with them as well, right? um, Good communication, right, with those people that you work with. um, it's really very important. So networking, working with them, working with some projects, and I still do some of that. Actually, going to do maybe sending an abstract about immunization um, for the pharmacy conference sometime in August. So not only nursing, so the other members of the healthcare, pharmacy, uh, physical therapists with cardiac rehab, those are the people that you want to be in your uh, you want to be able to network with them, because you're going to learn a lot from them, and they will also learn a lot from you. So again,
Yeah.
give and take. Mhm.
I find the last couple of years at our conferences, we've been seeing a lot more collaborations, a lot more
Yes,
presentations on pharmacy nurse-led clinics and things like that, where that collaboration is
that's good.
is so cohesive and it just makes sense when people present it, but for some reason we're not seeing it replicated
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, and it is fantastic that way. What if anybody? Sorry, I forgot to mention earlier at the beginning of this. If anybody else has any questions or comments they want to say, you can feel free to throw it in the chat box, raise your hand, just jump on your mic too. This is a relaxed, open forum. If you have any thoughts or comments, or I'm not asking the questions you want to you want to further explore, go for it. Um, so let me just regather my thoughts here for a quick second. I Can you think, or could you recommend any certain traits? Because when I read um, your bio, I listen to you talk, and then I would think about the other conversations we've had on this forum, as far as saying yes to opportunities, just taking that leap to go out there and say yes, and to work hard and to network. Do you have any other um, characteristics or skills you think young nurses or nurses mid-career should really be trying to further develop?
Well, not only that, we always have to think about nursing and taking care of people, we also have to take care of ourselves, right? I may not have done that well. I was just a go, go, go. I think I was able to do that because I didn't have children. But really, it's the other thing that I would really say to new to nurses is to continue to learn, right? That is an important thing. Healthcare is it is always changing. The way we treat people is always changing, so you have to keep up with the changing environment in healthcare, and changing ways to treat people. So, previously we were okay with LDL of 2 post MI. Now they're pushing a much lower LDL, and kind of even other ways to identify those people who may be at risk for cardiovascular disease. So we have to really keep up with those informations that are really available to us. I know it's very expensive to go to conferences, but there are other ways to learn. Lots of webinars that are available there. Um, you know, rounds that are happening in our facilities, CCCN having webinars and those information that they provide us on emails. So there's a lot of those that are available to us. So continue to learn. Don't be stagnant in in yeah. So and that will also give you an opportunity to diversify your profession, right? So when you hear something exciting, maybe you may want to, pursue that. And the only way you can kind of do that is kind of learning from those, getting the information from education sessions that you may be attending. Okay? Certification is a big thing. I know I made my 2 certification last when I was retiring. CCN certification to me is an important thing to have. It validates our professional skills. It shows your commitment to your profession. And it builds one's confidence, right? So you have to have that confidence in you and professional satisfaction, right? So I don't know if I answered your question, but
You
learning
did excellent. Your reasons for certification is like the nicest summary for an explanation for reasons for certification I've ever heard. Because you asked, we were like, well, why should I get certified? Like, I'm certified, and people would ask, I'm like, I mean, for me, it was that validation of some knowledge base, that validation to take a next step. But yeah, validation shows your commitment, builds your confidence. I'm like, well, that should be on the CNA website. That's perfect. You nailed it. So throughout your career, you have shifted through different roles. You've made different roles. You've evolved roles you've been in. What kind of roles do you think nurses hold in shaping the future of healthcare and nursing as a profession moving forward?
Yeah, so this, of course, there's a lot of challenges, right? I'm sort of out of the loop of what's going on in, hospitals because I am in a private clinic, not really involved, or I don't work with a lot of nurses. So the thing though is we have to always be active in making sure that the nurse's voice are being heard. And CCCN is the voice of cardiovascular nursing, right? We have to be leaders. We have to be able to identify ways to improve care of patients and be able to communicate that with our leaders as well. And as well as, I would say, politicians as well, right? So they have to be willing to listen to us. And we are actually doing that in heart failure care here in Winnipeg. We've had conversation with our Minister of Health, who has great interest in heart failure. So just being able to be the voice of nursing and be able to communicate your concerns with the proper people.
I totally agree. And again, I think you have a beautiful skill of being able to summarize many fragmented or disorganized thoughts I have in my own head. You just summarize it in like 2 sentences. I'm like, yes, exactly that. Yeah. That's exactly what I think we need up here. Thank you, as your leader, for that. I think there's also some power in, like, for example, being an NP, working in a private clinic. That's not a super common role. At least it's not, certainly isn't in New Brunswick. I don't know if we have any private cardiology clinics in New Brunswick. So even in that capacity and showing kind of the breadth that a nurse can offer is quite impressive too, and quite powerful, both to like healthcare and to patient care, but also to like other nurses to see and hear what kind of things we can do.
I mean, in the private clinic, the nurses who actually had experience working in, tertiary care facility, know the resources out there for patients. And I don't think many of the physicians in, well, my physician, that clinic, are aware of these resources, um, where to get an occupational therapist, assess patients at home, those kinds of things, referral to home care, palliative care, all that stuff. So I think the nurses that have that experience, because of working in a tertiary care facility or any other institution, going into a private clinic will be able to help that. And I'm hoping that many of private clinics will hire more nurses in that capacity. Unfortunately, I think the focus is more hiring physician assistants rather than nurses. So, and it's
Yeah,
just
here,
because the funding
okay.
issue.
Yeah, that is the fun. Here in New Brunswick, we still have a role called a nurse associate, which sounds very similar to what your clinical nurse specialist role is, or yeah. And they're beginning talks about swapping those out for um, clinician assistants and physician assistants and stuff like that. So it's
Yeah.
interesting. There's clearly a time of change. This is a role that I often thought, oh, this would be an excellent advanced practice NP.
Mhm.
Um, and then, but this is the way our government is looking at shifting it too. And you wonder, okay, well, is there a voice of nursing being verbalized or heard at these tables? And sadly, in my province, I'm not so sure there is, but it is an opportunity in case anybody on here is from New Brunswick other than me wants to take up that torch anytime soon. Uh, so does anybody else have anything they'd like to chime in here? I have more questions I can probe Esterly to hear with. Chris, you got one?
See if I can click away here.
Oh, hi.
Thanks, Australita, for coming and joining tonight. I knew so much about your history, but not the depth of, I think, your fortitude, right? Like you truly are when we think about pioneers in nursing. And I think of the things that you just so humbly have told us about your history and how you made opportunities happen for yourself by either design or being in the right place or being curious. And I always wondered, like, where did that come from? Like, what well inside of you sort of made you always sort of, ask for more, be there, etc. Because I think for many of our nurses, it's like there's that well that you have inside of you that you tapped into that have brought you along this amazing journey of cardiovascular nursing. And what is it that we could learn from some of your journey in terms of tapping into that and just making our journeys our own? And then I
Well,
have one other question after you answer that one.
I think it's the program that we had in the Philippines. That was really a tough program. So there's a lot of, as a nursing student, then we work really hard. We work like pretty much 6 days a week. You're just not, and I think it came from that. There's a lot of expectations. And that when I went and started working on H4, I had this tough, wonderful, but tough head nurse that actually took me on and helped me, right? So, but she expects a lot from me. She expected a lot from me, but I learned a lot from her, right? So, and also have another manager who said, don't just tell me problems. I want you to tell me some solutions to the problem. And that's a big thing. So before I meet with any of my directors or managers, I have to think it, right? And and really that really helped me a lot. So Deborah, I could never I will always remember what she said to me. But there's also a lot of people that I know are willing to help me if I have some ideas. And I know if I have ideas and I have those people that will help me and I have some resources available to me, um, it just gives me more appetite to do things, right? So, such as, for example, going back into doing my NP program, and I know it's going to be expensive. You know, my husband was sick, it was costing a lot of money. But, you know, Dr. Tam and Shelley saying, yes, sure, you can use the money to go and become a nurse practitioner because that will be helpful for the program, right? And then and then identifying some gaps in care. And I thought, well, you know, I always think about what can I do to help to mitigate that, right? Such as the nurse practitioner transition program, because I'm seeing that patients are not being seen right away within, you know, so many weeks, so many days after being discharged from the hospital. And it's not only that, like reading from literatures, you know that readmission, 30 days readmission rate for heart failure is pretty high. So what can we do about it? Right? And and that's just kind of one of the project that Shelley thought that was a great idea and let's do it. Right. So yeah, and having the right people with you and supporting you, that's the thing. I've never had any directors that never supported me. I am very thankful for all the people, for all the managers, directors, and physicians that I work with. I could not pinpoint anybody that did not support me. And of course, the nurses that work with me as well. They are hardworking nurses, you know, Dawn and Rose and the support staff. They're great. And they made my work a lot easy because they help me and they're willing to help. So, yeah. And
My
you, Chris, you're always there to help me as well.
Well, my second question to you is about mentorship. You're the reason that I joined CCCN. You were a fantastic role model. You kind of slyly sort of just got me slowly involved, come to this. And I know one of your hopes when we sat together for a long time was that, and I think you carried CCCN Manitoba for a lot of years. And for those of us that are in that mentorship now that you've done so, what are some tips that you say, in terms of being a good mentor and mentoring people out there? Just some tips for people.
I would say being open to your mentee, have a good communication. I don't know if you say have some rules, but always be um, like find the time to become available to them. So set some time to be available to them. And, you know, some of them are afraid, right? So, I'd like to be able to have a mentee that will not hesitate to talk to me. So it's just like you being a mom. Like so, and if you don't know the answer, the two of you can find the answer, right? So helping them do some literature search or finding the right person to answer the questions that your mentee may have. And just I don't I don't know, just being you, I guess. I don't think I've actually have really thought about what is a good mentor. I just I just what you see is what you get. But I'm always willing to help people, to help nurses, and I know how to do lit search. I know how to find the person who may be able to help us. So those are the things that I will be able to help the mentee with if they have any questions. So just being available and open to them. Don't scare them.
Thanks, Estrelita.
Thanks, Chris. Amy, you've got your hand raised there. We'll pop over to you next.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, thanks for the talk. It was so cool to hear your journey and all the experiences and wisdom you've accumulated. I'm just wondering how, you've talked so much about how you were surrounded by supportive people and people who, colleagues and interdisciplinary roles who really supported you. But how did you deal with things when you came up upon barriers? Because that's what I find. I feel like I've been sort of, at various points in my career, just really spinning my wheels with what I think are great ideas, and nobody's really willing to hear it out or willing to give it time or resources. So I'm just wondering how, I'm sure you've come across that, even though you had very supportive colleagues and whatnot. But how do you deal with that?
Well, the thing is to be open to them, right? I know I've had one particular barrier when I'm trying to say when we were working on the heart failure care map, the heart attack AMI care map I was involved with as well. We had an automatic referral to cardiac rehab, right? And I wanted to do something similar to the heart failure care map or critical pathway, but the director of cardiac rehab was opposed to that. And he said it should be done by family physician because they have to make sure that the patient is stable by the time they get referred to cardiac rehab. But what is the referral rate from coming from family physician versus from, leaving the hospital? It's very, very low, right? I mean, I tried my best, but I did not win. So there are things that you would win, and there's some that you can. But to be able to let them know your reason why you're doing that, right? So, So it's a barrier when somebody else is just really opposing your vision of how patients can be managed well for example, post heart failure. But many of the things that I did were the people that I work with really embrace some of the many of the ideas that I have, because basically they don't really cost a lot of money, right? So the nurse practitioner transition clinic will actually save you thousands of dollars, and you kind of have to let them know that, right? So think about possible outcomes. If we save, this reducing hospitalization, how many thousands of dollars can you save, right? So when I said, nurses are not getting, when I introduced the nursing grand rounds for nursing, really, it does not cost money, right? So we identify a date once a month where nurses are able to actually present themselves, and really trying to encourage nurses to do that. It actually improves it increases their satisfaction. You kind of have to let your leaders know the possible positive outcomes of the programs or ideas that you have in mind, but knowing that sometimes you will not win in some cases. So and that's okay too. So somebody else can take that on later on. Yeah, I don't know if I've answered your questions, but really in many of the ideas and programs that I had in mind, they were accepted, and I had a really good response from many of the people that I work with. But you kind of have to think about reasonable. Is this program reasonable? How much will it cost? What will be the outcomes if you've done it? And you always have to evaluate any of the programs or any of the programs or projects that you have. So evaluation is an important thing to have, so that they will continue to support you in those programs that you have created. Yeah. So anyway.
Thank you, Esterline. In New Brunswick, we have a pretty good stroke program where if you have a stroke anywhere in the province, you get your imaging relatively quickly. The imaging is read quickly, and you receive treatment as long as all of the cogs align perfectly.
That's right.
But when they were putting that program in place, Sue Morris was involved in this, and she tells the story of they kept going to the government and explaining it, and they just weren't getting it. And then they changed the pitch. They went to the government and said, okay, here's how much a single stroke per patient is going to cost healthcare along the way. Here's what we lose in earnings. And when they changed the pitch to like, here's the financial loss or benefit, they got on board super quickly. They're like, well, yeah, of course we want people to receive quick and appropriate treatment for strokes. That totally makes sense. But to them, it was just a dollar scenario. But it's that pitch. You're very entrepreneurial in nursing. And I know as nurses, we don't often think about healthcare as a business, but your whole journey is building opportunities. It's finding the blue ocean where you can create an opportunity. It's finding the problem that creates an opportunity that you can make a new clinic or something along those lines. And then you've demonstrated again and again that you come with solutions, not just problems, a lesson you learned early. And they sound like they're pretty well-baked solutions. You don't just come and say, oh yeah, we probably could use a clinic and then walk away. You say, we need a nurse-led clinic. This is what that's going to take. I will help set this up. And you put the skin in the game as you build the clinic, which is fantastic. And I think something we maybe all struggle with at times when we think about, okay, well, how much time and energy do I want to invest in something? Maybe I see the problem, but am I willing to be part of the solution? And do I have the friends to help me along the way? And so making those connections that you get through saying yes to different opportunities along the way is a lesson we keep learning again and again in these conversations. Say yes to opportunities, and now make your own opportunities too. So thank you, Estrelita. Do you have any closing remarks before I kick us over to Ash? Ashley's going to close us off with a couple upcoming events for CCCN.
Just thank you so much for the opportunity to tell my story. I sometimes don't even think of those things, but I feel really good about it today. Just sort of reminiscing things that I've done, and be feeling proud. Now I'm feeling proud of myself.
You should.
And just one thing is to really to impart the importance of continuing to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And a good relationship with the people that you work with, and don't forget your family.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Estrelita. Even if it's like a snapshot into your journey, it is a treat for us to hear too. Thank you.
All right. So
yeah, I'm going to stop recording, Ashley, so that these don't get stuck in. Okay.